Estate. I'm a real estate agent, coach, and investor. And every week we do a weekly workshop where we talk about a different topic in real estate to help you move your business forward. It's every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Consider this your invitation. For those of you on Zoom, we are talking today about the market of the moment. So we have our favorite lender, Martin Rosenblum, who's going to join us in just a second. And he is going to talk to us about lots of stuff that's going on in the market right now today. Of course, the elephant in the room, the thing that everybody wants to know about are interest rates. So we're going to talk about interest rates. We're also going to talk about a few other options that buyers have right now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and talk about, as a real estate agent, what would we do and how would we direct that conversation based on what interest rates are today? Because as we know, they're not the best. And so there are a lot of people who are kind of like staying away because they feel like the interest rates are too high. I don't want to buy right now. I don't want to get myself into a situation. I'm starting to hear, and I'll ask Martin about this, I'm starting to hear a little bit more about adjustable rate mortgages, which is how we got into the 2008-2009 debacle. So I am interested to hear about that, because in my mind, I feel like, eek, stay away from that. And because we are at, like 20, 30-year highs, it's kind of like, well, we're only going to go down from here. So adjustable rate mortgages might not be that bad, but we'll talk to Martin about that. I'll leave that to the expert. So a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know. I know we have a few new people on Zoom and in person today. So I am Brittany Hannon. I am one of your coaches for the productivity coaching program. I have been doing real estate since 2018 when I bought my first investment property. And then I jumped into full-time real estate in 2020, and then the world shut down. And so I spent my time, watching videos and learning all I could, and all the questions that I had, I started taking two videos and just actually like looking up questions, doing my research, and then doing it on videos and teaching and training other people on all the questions that I had. Before this, I had an almost 20-year career in educational leadership. And so I did lots of coaching, training, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit about me. Martin has joined us. So Martin, come on up and tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about me. Good morning, everybody. So a little bit about myself. I've only been doing mortgage lending for about 38 years, and I would like to think that I'm pretty good at what I do at it, but obviously I'm here to help you guys in your endeavors and helping you in any way that I can. Keeping in mind too, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail, but I'm also a licensed financial advisor. So I've been doing that for 24 years. So not only do I look at the ability to help somebody just qualify for a loan, but I can look at the other areas of their finances and showing them maybe how to reposition things to make their new home payment a little bit more comfortable for them, especially with where housing prices are at right now and with interest rates up a little bit. So I'll turn it back over to you and we'll go from there.
All right, so you can stay up here because we're gonna do, I'm gonna throw it back to you real quick. So we are gonna do this Q&A style. So I'm gonna ask you questions and you're gonna jump in. And then anything that is gonna be, on the real estate agent side, I'll jump in and I'll talk about, okay, based on what our lender is telling us, here's how we would now present that to our client, or, here might be some questions to ask or things like that. We'll do it Q&A style. I'm going to ask some questions. When you guys have questions, put them in the chat, and then I'll act as like moderator. So, and you guys who are here in person, feel free to shout it out. Just be loud enough so that our Zoom friends can hear you. All right. So first and foremost, of course, everybody wants to know, give us an update on
interest rates.
Interest rates. Everybody wants to know about this. So give us an update on interest rates and how that's affecting how you're seeing new buyers coming in and what they're saying.
It's a great question always, and it's funny. I was just in another meeting, on a Zoom meeting for the Ojai office, and that was the biggest question that came up: is where are interest rates and where do you see them going? So as much as I hate to say it, interest rates obviously are a little bit on the high side. We're hovering for the good guy rate, quote, are typically in that mid 7% range. It is possible for some to have slightly higher interest rates depending on what they bring to the table in terms of down payment or credit score or things of that nature. If you are a first-time home buyer, and your income is within certain limits. That is really good for you because you get the good guy rates regardless of your down payment or your credit score or property type or things of that nature. So I really want to impress upon everybody, if you're working with first-time home buyers with incomes within, I think it's like $148,000 combined income, which is a decent income for most. And I'm finding that a lot of people are well within that income range, that we're able to waive all of the pricing adjustments for buyers to get them that good guy rate. So keep that in mind if you're working especially with those first-time home buyers. First-time home buyer is somebody who has not owned a home in the last 3 years. So they could have owned something prior to, but if it's not within the last 3 years, they're still technically a first-time home buyer, which is huge. And as far as interest rates are going, we're probably going to see them in this range for quite some time. I'm not seeing interest rates dropping anytime in the near future. So realistically, throughout the rest of this year, we're most likely going to be seeing interest rates in that mid 7% range. There's going to be some volatility here and there, but I'm not seeing any significant reductions coming up anytime soon.
So you mentioned the price, I'm blanking, the price adjustments.
Loan level pricing adjustments.
Yes, tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so loan level pricing adjustments. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have what's called risk-based pricing. Anytime there's a little bit more risk to a loan, the pricing of that loan goes up a little bit. For example, when I quote the good guy rate, it used to be if you had a FICO score at 740, you would get that best interest rate. But now, because of some of the changes that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have made, they've bumped up that good guy rate to a FICO score of 780. So anybody with a credit score below 780 in 20-point increments, 760, 740, 720, you're going to have increases in those pricing adjustments, which means your interest rate's going to be higher, or you have to pay more for a lower interest rate. There are also pricing adjustments depending on your down payment. Is it 5%, 10%, 20%, or 40%? And those good guy rates are at that 40% down payment. Realistically, unfortunately, most buyers are not coming in with 40% down. I'm seeing a lot of them that are in that 20 range and even maybe a little bit less where there's mortgage insurance on their loan. So now we're looking at the possibilities of where is their best pricing going to be, and do we switch them to maybe an FHA loan because they can get a lower interest rate and lower payments with a lower credit score than they can on a conventional loan. And when you also look at property type, that's big right now because of how prices have gone up. I have a lot of buyers that are looking at condominiums. If you're purchasing a condo with less than a 25% down payment, there's a pricing adjustment. So when you look at all of these things, and keep in mind too that these are all collective. So if you're buying a condo with a low down payment, you have a low credit score, your pricing is going to go through the roof. Unless you're a first-time home buyer, you get all of those pricing adjustments waived. So there are some benefits to the first-time buyer. If you're not a first-time buyer, we have to deal with it accordingly. And then we have to look at credit score, loan to value, property type, and everything else that may come into play.
Tell us a little bit more about the FHA versus conventional.
Okay, so another great question. FHA has a lot more flexibility than conventional loans from a standpoint of it's easier to qualify for FHA loans. But even though their interest rates are lower, their mortgage insurance can be a little bit higher. But the neat thing about FHA is that if you have a lower credit score, typically there are not as high of pricing adjustments to the pricing of an FHA loan as there will be with a conventional loan. So if somebody has a low credit score and a small down payment on the conventional side, we might have to be bumping up that interest rate significantly higher for them. And even with where mortgage insurance may be, an FHA loan is going to be a lot more affordable with lower interest rates and possibly even lower mortgage insurance costs for somebody in that realm. So if we're working with clients, I'll always look at what do they bring to the table, where is going to be the best way to structure the transaction for them, and how can we best suit the type of loan for them to get them into the best payment and comfortability or affordability with their mortgage.
Awesome. All right. Yep, we got a question.
With FHA, you said they have not found a home for 3 years. Can they be considered for a second FHA loan? If they've done
So
FHA in the
you're
past.
misunderstanding just a little bit. So for the conventional loans, to get the pricing adjustment waivers, first-time home buyer, not 3 years.
Okay.
FHA doesn't matter. You can be a first-time home buyer or a previous homeowner and still get an FHA loan. There are no pricing adjustment waivers to FHA loans. So it doesn't matter if you've been a first-time home buyer or not for FHA.
Really, you can do it more than one time, FHA loan.
Yes.
Wow.
And you can do that for VA as well.
You just can't have them at the same time, right?
That's a great question. Technically, you can. So let's say, for example, on an FHA loan, if you have a home somewhere in the Midwest or whatever, and you're moving to California, and you have an FHA loan on that home, wherever it may be, yes, you can get another FHA loan so long as you can show or prove that you're going to own or occupy the new purchase. For VA, you can use it more than once, depending on the amount of entitlement you've had. If you've used a small portion of your entitlement somewhere in the East Coast or Midwest or whatever, and now you're coming to the West Coast, as long as you have a decent amount of remaining entitlement left over, you can use your VA remaining entitlement to purchase a home here with 0 down, or maybe just have to make a small down payment. Again, as long as we can prove you're going to own or occupy the residence.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have more than one FHA or more than one VA loan at the same time, as long as we're owner occupying the property.
Okay, good. Sounds good. A little bit.
Another question. So VA buyers, and that you're helping me work with right now, my
Yes.
heart. And my question is, because they're so limited in what's available in their price range, if they went to an FHA loan, would that not open more options for
No.
them?
And the reason why is this. First of all, the huge difference between VA and FHA. One, you can do 0 down. I know your clients are possibly coming in with a down payment, but FHA also has very high mortgage insurance. VA loans do not. They do have the funding fee, but that by itself is not going to be greater than the FHA mortgage insurance. And also keep in mind, depending on the price range, because we're looking at a lot of condos, condos also have to be FHA approved as well as VA approved. And I'm finding that there are more VA approved condos than FHA approved condos. So in my opinion, it's going to be better suited for them to stick with the VA, especially since we're looking at condominiums as a possibility.
Okay, and to follow up with that on my end, I'm wondering, because they're going to be putting possibly a big down, would that not cover your PMI that's 20% down?
Okay, so FHA has mortgage insurance regardless of the down payment. VA has no mortgage insurance, but they have the funding fee, and the down payment is irrelevant there as well. Depending on their situation, we might be able to look at conventional financing for them if it made sense for them to do. For example, they're looking at condos and maybe it's not VA approved, but because of the down payment they're making and because of, I think their credit scores were decent, that maybe a conventional loan could be advantageous for them in not having to use the entitlement. So that could be a possibility.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My
Wanting to see
pleasure.
what else is out there for them.
No,
So
you're making
thank
me work now.
I know it.
I have a question. So I
Yes.
know the difference between the FHA and conventional loan, but I don't really know much about VA loan. Like, what do you have to be qualified for a VA loan?
Okay, so VA, you're either active duty or you're a veteran. You have been in the military, armed forces, whatever, and you have received your VA entitlement, meaning that you have been in the military for a long enough period of time
Okay.
to establish that entitlement. So that way you can use that entitlement to purchase a home with nothing down.
Okay.
And I
Should we
love
have
VA loans.
You love VA loans?
Yes, they're good loans.
Should we have that entitlement kind of like the pre-approval letter, like that should be in place right now?
Great question. So anytime that I'm working with a veteran, I will always get the information I need. I will get their certificate of eligibility that will show me what their entitlement is. Have they used it in the past? Are they exempt from the VA funding fee or not? So all I do is contact the client. I get a little bit of information and I run the certificate. So I can take care of that myself. And I will always do that long before we're presenting any offers to know what their qualifications are.
Are we good?
Yes.
Just making sure.
I've already run a COE,
Thank you.
so not a problem. Certificate of eligibility.
Okay, so let's jump back to, I think there's always a misconception with the conventional loans, and a lot of people think that conventional loans need 20% down. What tell us, what I'm going to get to is I want to know the pros and cons of using both, because especially once we're in a transaction for the agents, when we're in a transaction, there is a difference between conventional and VHA, FHA, VA and FHA.
Yes.
And so first off, tell us about the conventional.
Okay, so conventional loans, a big misunderstanding for a lot of buyers. They think that they have to have 20% down. Technically, you can do a conventional loan under the Home Ready program, but there are certain qualifications for that and price limitations or income limitations. So it's very difficult in Ventura County to qualify for those programs, but technically there are some remote areas that we might be able to do 3% down. Otherwise, typically you can do a conventional loan with as little as 5% down. Anything greater than that, anything less than 20%, you still have mortgage insurance, but you can do 5, 10, or 50% down on a regular conventional loan. The main difference between it and FHA is FHA only requires 3.5% down. And VA, of course, if you have full entitlement, you have 0 down capabilities. So those are the main differences. As far as some of the problems that can arise, the only thing that you really want to pay attention to if you're doing any loan with a small down payment is, what is the asking price of the home? What is the offer being presented? And are there multiple offers going in excess of the sales price of the home? If you're dealing with somebody who has a small down payment and now you're dealing with a property value that's getting escalated because of multiple offers, realistically, how do you feel as a realtor as to what the appraisal may come in at? Because a lot of times people that are making small down payments, they're using a lot of, if not all of their assets for that down payment and closing costs. So if the sales price is not coming in to the appraised value and the appraised value is now less, does the buyer have the ability to make up the difference? And that's the biggest concern that you may have with somebody making a small down payment. So we want to make sure if they're going above and beyond the asking price, will the appraisal come in? And if it doesn't, what realistically are their capabilities of coming up with that difference if they still wish to purchase the property?
Hey guys, we're going to jump back into the workshop in just a second. But first, if you're getting value out of this, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so that you get more videos just like this as soon as they come out. Don't forget to watch till the end for a special bonus. And one last thing before we jump back in, if you're interested in coaching and taking your business to the next level, we have a proven system that has worked with hundreds of agents to get them into production. We would love to help you. Schedule a call with me at the link below and let's connect. Now let's jump back into the workshop. So let's talk about this on the flip side. We've been talking about working with buyers. If you're the listing agent, there are some things that we want to take into consideration, because when you're the listing agent, now there are some differences, because when you're the listing agent and you see an FHA loan come in, there are some things that go off in listing agents' minds. Some of the things that go off in listing agents' minds are that, oh no, if there's an FHA or a VA loan, they're going to require certain things to be fixed or corrected or whatever. Can you speak a little bit about that?
That's a great thing to bring up. So a lot of misunderstandings from listing agents and sellers as well. So it used to be FHA and VA loans were a little bit more difficult because of the condition or quality of the property. So keeping that in mind, there are a little bit more things that FHA and VA appraisers will look into in doing an appraisal, but it's not as bad as it used to be in any way, shape, or form. And realistically, it's almost very similar to doing any conventional loan. If an appraiser goes out to a property and sees a property in disrepair, they're going to ask for things to be repaired even on the conventional side. For FHA, VA, they may take a little bit more of a look to certain things, maybe in the attic or the roof. But realistically, if there's something visually apparent to any appraiser for any type of loan, they're going to call it out. Mainly, we're looking for health and safety concerns. Again, any appraiser is going to be looking for that. Other than that, there realistically aren't any major problems. Unless your home is built prior to 1978 and you see peeling paint on the walls or in the eaves, then they may come back with and say, you've got to take care of that on the FHA and VA side. You typically don't see that on conventional loans. So we have to be very careful if there's lead-based paints on the property, 1978 and prior. Otherwise, you sand it down, you repaint it, typically not a big deal. So other than that, no real major differences from an appraisal standpoint to any type of loans. And I do a lot of VA loans. I do a lot of FHA loans as well as conventional. I've had very minimal problems with appraisals on any of the loans I'm doing right now.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that when you are, if something comes back where it has to be fixed, it's always a negotiation point still. So it's not saying the seller has to fix this or the buyer has to fix this and pay for it or whatever. It's all a negotiation point. So you definitely can go back and say, if you're the listing agent, you can say, well, we had a bunch of offers come in. We don't have to fix these things. You need to pay to fix these things, buyer. And on the flip side, if you're the buyer and you know they don't have any other offers, you have a little bit more negotiation to say, you know, like, my buyers are not willing to fix this. The sellers have to pay for it. And so it's always a negotiation point, even if they're saying it must be fixed before close of escrow. So you can come back and renegotiate.
Yep.
Go ahead.
With the appraisal, is it always the bank that is the one calling for the appraisal?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you say bank, so typically our company will order the appraisals and we'll order it either through the FHA, VA, or conventional side. And then once the appraisal comes in, like you said, we'll deal with anything that pops up. And now it's between buyer and seller to negotiate how they wish to have anything repaired. And that can be even from the home inspection, not even just the appraisal. So a lot of times you'll come back with a request for repairs kind of a thing. And if you're talking about if the seller is willing to fix them, great. Keep in mind too that the seller can issue a credit to the buyer for closing costs. So we can't have repairs being paid for through an escrow. You don't want to see that on a closing statement because now underwriting is going to go, what's all this that needs to be repaired? So we want to be careful with how we're negotiating and for the dollar amount and making sure that any credits being given by the seller do not exceed the actual costs associated to the loan. That's important as well.
Yeah, so you don't ever, you can't do credits in excess of the closing costs.
Right.
So if the closing costs are $12,000, you can't ask for 15. You can adjust the price and you can move it down if they're saying like it needs $15,000 or $20,000 or $120,000. That's not going to be able to go on the closing costs, but you can adjust it down, the price, and now you have you're still in the game. So as far as, well, let's switch gears and talk about, we had a question on here talking briefly, if you can touch on USDA loans.
Okay,
we always get this question.
So USDA is available. I do believe we have the ability to do them. I haven't done a USDA loan in many, many years. The USDA is only for certain geographical areas, if I'm not mistaken, in what's called rural parts of town. So depending on where the property is located, yes, you can qualify for that type of a loan, and they can do very minimal, if not zero down for those types of loans, depending on the qualifications again of the buyer. And I believe for USDA, if I'm not mistaken, your income has to be within certain limits. You do have to be first-time home buyers, I think. And for anybody that might be looking in those areas, obviously just let me know. I'll go back and review guidelines a little bit just to make sure that I'm talking the way I'm supposed to and instructing the buyers accordingly. So they are a little bit of a different type of a loan, and the qualifications are a little bit different for those as well.
Okay, good. I want to jump back to the interest rate conversation because I know this is a big one that we're coming up against a lot with our buyers. And so now they're at like what, 30-year highs or something like that?
Well, very much so. Honestly, I'm not sure if it was a 30-year high, but I know we're in probably the last two, I don't know if it's 3 decades old, but interest rates are extremely high right now, comparatively speaking to where we were a few years ago. And over time, we're a little bit over the market norm. Market norm over the last 30 years is probably averaged about 6.4. We're now in the mid-7s. So we're about 1% higher than where the market norm for the last 30 years has been.
So now I want some of your predictions. So give us like a very brief beginner's overview on what drives the interest rates. Very basic. I know you can go super detailed into this, but funny. Just like dumb it down for us.
I always joke with everybody. My predictions are rates are going to go up or down.
Oh, great.
There you go. So all that being said, realistically, and I know we've heard a lot of things throughout this year from other mortgage professionals that we're talking about interest rates are going to drop on May 10th. That didn't happen. Then that same individual, I'm not going to mention any names, was talking about how, well, maybe there was a misunderstanding and realistically that interest rates were probably going to drop in August. Well, guess what? Today is August 28th and interest rates still haven't come down. So even the professionals that are out there talking about all of this stuff, how can I put this without saying anything bad about anybody? I'm going to change gears here a little bit. So realistically, my predictions, interest rates are going to hover in that mid 7% range at least through the end of this year. And depending on how things play out economically, especially with inflation, that's the key number. And we're going to see numbers bouncing around a little bit for the consumer price index and different things that are coming out, CPI as people talk about. And everybody's going to be looking at those numbers. And then they're going to think, well, if the numbers come down next month, interest rates should drop. Keep in mind what the feds are looking for because they're the ones that are increasing short-term interest rates. Short-term rates are different than long-term rates. Just because the short-term goes up, that doesn't mean mortgage rates or long-term rates are going to go up with them. A lot of times mortgage interest rates are already priced into the market in anticipation of what may be coming down the pipe. So what the feds are looking for is a sustained dropping of the inflation rate. So just
Have we
because
had
it
that?
drops, have we had what?
Sustained dropping of interest rates.
No,
We have had the opposite.
correct.
It is
Not
still
interest rates,
continuing.
inflation.
Inflation, sorry. Thank you.
So,
We have still continued to see it go up, even
Correct.
with interest rate hikes, and they're saying that they're going to continue doing interest rate hikes until they can get it
correct.
stabilized.
So they wanted to see, I think May and June, we saw the inflation rate drop a little bit, but then July hit and the numbers went back up. So we're not seeing a sustained reduction of inflation. And that's what the feds are going to be looking for. And every month when these numbers come out, it's going to say a little bit of a story. If the numbers drop a hair once, you might see a slight reduction in mortgage interest rates, but you're not going to see the feds making any moves accordingly until they see a consistent history of the dropping of those inflationary fears that everybody's having right now. So because inflation is still hovering, what, in the 4% range, maybe a little bit higher, and the feds are trying to get down to 2%, that ain't happening anytime soon, in my opinion. And especially when we're seeing all of the costs of gas and everything else that's been going up, oil's been going up. So I think rates are going to stay in that mid 7% range for a while, my prediction.
Yeah.
For the time being.
Yeah. And the idea behind that, just like the 10,000 foot view, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea behind that is when interest rates are high, it's because the US economy is doing pretty well. They're not needing to pump money into our housing economy. And housing economy is a driving factor of inflation of all of these different key points. And so the reason we saw 2% interest rates was because we were in a global pandemic. We were trying to keep our economy moving. And so they were like, please still buy houses. Here's money for you for almost free. Are we going to see that anytime soon?
No.
No,
If it were,
literally,
yeah.
exactly. Not anytime soon, as in not in the next, until we see another global pandemic. Or until,
Something drastic would have
Yes.
to happen.
Okay, here's my prediction.
yes,
For the record. No, I feel like California is a huge industry with the film industry. And with it being on strike since March and don't see any progress in that, that I think there's going to be a number of people going through bankruptcies. And I feel like that's going to impact California hugely. That's my own personal,
I agree with you
totally
to a certain degree.
non-professional opinion.
I was actually going to bring this up because what's in the news? We keep talking about what's happening with the economy. And as Brittany just mentioned, the economy is doing exceptionally well right now. Do we hear that in the news? No. What do we hear in the news? We hear people on strike. We hear people losing their jobs. We hear companies laying off tens of thousands of people. We hear all the negative sides of what's happening to everybody that's in the workforce. But realistically, unemployment is at a incredibly low number right now. So what you hear in the news is not always indicative of what's happening in the global economy or even just the domestic economy. So you're hearing all these horror stories of everything that's going on right now for everybody in their jobs. Yes, there could be people that may be going into bankruptcy or going into foreclosure, but realistically, it's a small percentage of the overall scheme of everything that's out there. The economy is still doing exceptionally well. Stock market's doing pretty decent. Even though it's been volatile, stock market is still very high. People's investments have been going up significantly. You can just put money into a CD account and get 4 or 5%. So people are still making more. That's another thing too. All these other people, as much as you see in the news, everybody losing their jobs, you're hearing also about people that have been going on strike and getting wage increases. There's a lot of jobs that are paying a lot more right now to keep up with inflation, and that's also happening. So we have to keep in mind that what we hear in the news is not indicative of everything that's going on right now in the economy. The economy is still extremely strong.
Yeah, I would say, two comments about that is that I do agree that we here in LA, Ventura County are gonna see some of that, but you know, like we have people listening in from all over California, they're not gonna see that as much. We might see that here because it's so much more localized here. The other thing I would say about that though too, is that what happens, because the vast majority of the entertainment industry is not these A-list, you know, celebrities, it's people who are the lighting guy, the sound guy, the, you know, props master, all of those kind of people. What are they gonna do? Yeah, they're not working, they're not getting jobs, they're not getting paid. So they might have to go out and find another job, but not necessarily go bankrupt, not necessarily, you know, because unemployment is at an all-time low also, there are jobs available. So it might be something like that where we see a shift from all of these people in the entertainment industry saying, okay, it's time, we need to like really do something. The other thing is that so many of these people who are in the entertainment industry already have other jobs. You know, like how many actors do we know who are actors and working at the restaurant? You know, like they're our waiter who are, you know, like they already have these other jobs. They're already doing these other things. And so then now they're saying, I need to pick up more shifts because I'm not getting work otherwise. So I think the entertainment industry is like its own little beast, but it is extremely localized to our area and to, you know, like this one particular segment.
Right.
So we'll see what happens with that. It is a good thing to keep in mind. And I know you have a personal interest in this. And so that'll be a good thing for you to really know, keep your finger on the, yeah.
Do you have any tips that you us as a buyer agent to use to kind of like, because they're scared right now with the interest rate that's so high, they're scared to get, you know, go get a loan or looking for the house. What kind of tips that we could talk to them, explain to them?
Did you get my Friday email? No?
I'm gonna check, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm pretty sure you're in there. So what I sent out Friday was exactly this. It was a big picture of somebody. It says mortgage interest rates is 7.5%. I'm not gonna pay that much. And so the biggest tip I would say for somebody is, how much are you paying in rent? What's your interest rate on rent? It's 100%, because absolutely everything you pay goes towards absolutely nothing that you're building any wealth within. So I would try to let people know, and I'll get them in here because I'll be more than happy to speak with them as well, either in person, over the phone, or on Zoom. So keep in mind that I talk to a lot of buyers, and I'm trying to help them understand what is the focus, what is the reason they wish to buy a home. Family growing, they want to be homeowners, they want to get into a different school district, they don't want to be renters. What are the motivations? What is everybody focusing on right now? The interest rate. Is that one thing going to derail you to the degree that you're going to put off getting something that can be ultimately so beneficial for you in so many different ways? But one of the biggest tips that I talk about is looking at building wealth, building equity in property, getting the tax advantages of home ownership. Great example could be when you do your taxes, you can either itemize your deductions or take a standard deduction. Standard deduction for a married couple is like what, 29,000 bucks. Decent amount of money to reduce your taxes by. But what happens if you bought a home and you have an $800,000 mortgage at 7% interest? That's $56,000 a year of interest that you can now write off, plus your property taxes. So now you're going to be well in excess of $60,000 as an itemized deduction versus the $25,000 or $29,000 you might get as a standard deduction. You're going to save yourself in a normal 22 or 25% tax bracket probably $700 or $800 a month in tax savings. That's huge. So now if I'm paying $4,000 a month in rent and my mortgage is going to be $5,000 or more a month, I don't want to pay $5,000 a month for a mortgage. I'm already paying $4,000, it's too much. But if I'm going to get a $700 or $800 tax benefit, I've bridged that gap a lot. And now I'm building equity in my wealth. And what's going to happen in 12 or 18 months? Interest rates are going to drop at some point in time. So instead of paying 7, I can now get 5.5 or 6 or whatever they come down to. I don't think they're going to come down to 5.5. But realistically, if I can drop that interest rate by a point or 1.5 from where I'm at, and I can reduce my mortgage payments, and now I have a home that I've already lived in for a year and a half, and now it becomes more affordable, and I've been sustaining my tax benefits, that's a great position to be in. So I try to emphasize to people is let's focus on all of the benefits of homeownership, the financial benefits and the personal benefits of just owning your own home instead of waiting for another year or two to rent. And what's going to happen when interest rates drop? Everybody's coming out of the woodworks. And guess what happens when there's more competition for home ownership with the limited inventory that we're still going to continue to have? Housing prices are going to skyrocket again. And now you're going to have more competition with more buyers that are out there. So instead of seeing 3 or 4 or 5 offers being presented on a home, we're going to go back to where we were about a year ago, seeing 10 or 12 or 15 offers or more on a home. Who's getting bumped out? The majority of people, because your offer is going to be challenged to get accepted.
So I'm going to jump in here too, because it is, you know, one of the things, so I have a couple of things swirling around in my head. One of the things that I'm seeing that people are buying right now are people who are sick of renting, because rents are going up so much, especially in our areas with rent caps being implemented. People are saying we're going to then increase every single year and get the max amount that we can, because if I wait 2 years, I'm not going to be able to get that amount, and rents are going up so high so fast. So a lot of people are feeling that and not wanting that, and they're saying, hey, if I get a mortgage, at least that stays the same. So even if it's a little bit higher, at least it stays the same. Now, we as agents need to have this conversation, because I don't know about you, but so often when I talk to people, they don't want to go talk to the lender until they're ready. And what I want to do is I want to have enough knowledge and understanding to be able to have this conversation, but I also need to stay in my lane. We stay in our lanes, the lenders stay in their lanes. The lenders are not going out there selling houses. We're not going out there trying to lend them money. We need to know enough to know to be able to get them to the table, to be able to get them to sit down with Martin, and he can go over all those numbers. But we need to have a basic understanding of that as well. So I would definitely say that when we're talking to, like I was gonna ask you, and you can tell me if you think it's a little bit different. For me, what I'm seeing is that the people who are starting to buy right now, first of all, they're getting a little bit more comfortable with the higher interest rates. Maybe not comfortable, but they're saying, yes, yes. So they're not like, woohoo, 7%, but they are saying like, okay, it is what it is. I don't want to rent anymore. Those are the people who I'm seeing are like, I'm done with this. And they're the ones who are starting to call. Who are the people who, what is the reason that a lot of your clients are making the move and deciding to jump in?
They want to be homeowners. Plain and simple. They're tired of renting. They're tired of not being able to find a place that the landlords will allow their pets to be there, or they want a bigger yard for their pets, or they just need more room because they are now having more people coming into the family, and they just need a different location or a better school district or a multitude of different things. So people that are out and about in the market right now, they're out there because of very specific reasons, but there's a lot of buyers out there that have all of those same reasons. They're just holding back because of where interest rates. And I'm just always one that never wants to be controlled by something. I want to move forward in my own position and to be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? To be able to get into a better position over time. First house I bought, my interest rate was 14%. Granted, it only paid me a couple $100,000 for the house, but back in 1989, that was a lot of money. And at a 14% interest rate, I was in the mortgage business at that time. I knew interest rates were high. I didn't care. I wanted a house. And I'm so glad I did that, because over the years, I was able to move into something else, and create wealth over time. So.
And I know some of you guys know my story, but I'll share a little bit, the quick version of it. But I was in a small little condo out here that I had bought before I got into real estate. And so I had gotten what was it? I got a grant, like a down payment assistance grant. So I'm like, what is it called? So it was an FHA loan, and it was something that I couldn't refinance for at least 3 years. Otherwise I would give up the grant that they had given me. So in this time, that was at the end of 2019. So in 2020, interest rates had dropped and I was at a 4%. Can you believe it? It was so high. I was so upset. Everybody's getting 3%, 2%, and I was at 4%. So angry. Well, okay, interest rates started going up and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm okay with 4%, I guess. But it came to the point where I needed to sell and I needed to buy something else. I needed something better for my family, for my situation. And so I said, okay, you know what? It's time. I'm going to sell. I was putting in a bunch of offers. Everything was getting rejected because I was contingent on selling my place. So I said, let's forget that. Let's sell, rent something short term, and then buy something. So I did exactly that. We sold, we got more than I was expecting, which was great, which is what is still currently happening right now. For if things are in good condition, a lot of times they're still selling over asking with multiple offers, which was my situation. So I rented for, I want to say it was 4 months, and I was like, oh, I need to get back in because all I'm doing is throwing away my money. And so I knew that I needed to buy a home, and I knew as I'm sitting there, interest rates are getting higher and higher and higher and higher. But I was like, I don't care, we need to buy something, and we need to buy something that we want. So we finally found something, and we closed in July. So my interest rates were in the 6s. I don't even remember what it was because I did not care. I didn't care what the interest rates were. So I don't remember what it was. I'm not like fixated on it. It might've even been in the 7s because we ended up buying a condo. So point is, I have no idea what it is, what my interest rate was, because exactly, yeah, because I don't care. What I cared about is making sure we could pay the monthly mortgage, because I know that when interest rates drop, I'm not out there looking for my perfect home. I'm out there saying, great, now I can refinance. Let's call Martin up and do a refi. Instead of, and now my interest rate goes down, I'm saving on my mortgage. And by that time, you know, my partner's income will have gone up, you know, over time, all of these things are happening. Income's going up, new jobs, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not worried one single bit about interest rates. And those are the kind of stories that we need to be able to communicate to our buyers. And so take my story and use it. Use it as something that, you know, like somebody in my office, or you can say somebody on my team or somebody I know, whatever you want to use it for, and talk to them about how, yes, people are still selling and still buying even in this market. Why are they doing it? Because it makes sense for them. We're not caring about the interest rate. We're caring about what the monthly mortgage is, because eventually we'll be able to bring that interest rate down. And so I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about anything. And I'm not in a rental with potential for my rents to go up and up and up. I'm set with a mortgage. I'm good. I don't have to worry about that. And so if I have to stay there for however long I need to stay there for, I'm good. I'm set, and I'm not going to care about that.
Landlords can kick you out at any time because they want to move back to the property.
Yep. My mom just had a situation. My mom is like the primo renter. She just went through a divorce. So she had been a homeowner for 25 years. We sold her house. She decided to rent because we were like, let's just get you into a rental until we can figure out, you know, let things fall into place. She is like the ultimate renter. Her house is always pristine. Everything is great about it. She went in and reglazed the tubs because she was like, these are kind of yellowing. Didn't tell the landlord, which actually is not a great thing if you're a landlord, but she's improving the property, you know? So when time came around for her lease to be renewed, she had to pay, there was a 9% increase in her rent. That is huge. 9% is huge. She kind of like flipped out, and then there were a couple things that she had some maintenance requests that hadn't been taken care of yet. So she was like, I have this request that hasn't been taken care of. I have this. I am like an excellent renter. Everything is paid on time, no question, you know, all of this stuff. But what she received back was a notice to vacate. They are trying to kick her out because she's pushing back now on this rental increase. So she, of course, is flipping out. What ended up happening was that they were saying, okay, we're going to talk the owner down off the ledge. She just was having a bad day, and with all this stuff coming at her, she wanted to be out, which is dumb on her end. But what ended up happening is that my mom only had a 4% rent increase, but still 4%, you know, of $3,000, whatever it is, that's going to be significant. And my mom is to the point where she's starting to think about retirement and all this kind of stuff. She is not trying, she's thinking ahead now. If this is 4%, if this is going to happen every year, I'm going to be priced out of this place pretty soon. So those are the people who are buying.
I want to add to that real quick. So some of the things I heard from there is you've got somebody who's living in a home that's not theirs. They're improving somebody else's home. So the improvements they do are going to be for the benefit of the owner, not for the tenant. And then I'm also hearing that when things go wrong or stop working, the tenant is asking the landlord to fix things, and landlords, because they want to save money, don't fix everything or fix it to a degree that really it should have been done. And now you've got an extremely upset tenant because they're improving a property and they feel that the landlord should be taking care of them, which they won't do. And then on top of that, not even do the repairs to help make things more comfortable for the person that lives there. You have absolutely no control as a tenant, and you get no benefit of being there other than the right to live there for the time being that they allow you
until
to
they kick you out when your lease agreement is up.
That's one of your biggest tips to talk to renters about.
Okay, yes. Yeah. So, okay, Maria, you have a question that I want you to come on and ask because I'm wanting to make sure I get it right. Well, I'm not going to get it right. So unmute and ask us your question.
Okay, so I have some friends that they bought their property about 2 years now, and they had a PMI on the loan, and now they have, I think they only put down like 10%, but since the house has come up in price or they have some equity, they were asking me how can they remove the PMI now, and if they do that, are their interest rates going to be affected?
Okay, great question. So first of all, is it a conventional or FHA loan?
Conventional.
Okay, good. So on conventional, yes, you can request for the mortgage insurance to be removed. They need to contact whoever is servicing the loan, whoever they're making their payments to. And they need to go through whatever their processes might be. Sometimes you may need to have owned the home for a specific period of time, or at such time that you can prove that the value of the home is now greater than the 80% loan to value. They need to remove the mortgage insurance. So they have to contact their loan servicer, request what needs to be done. Most likely an appraisal will be done on the property at the cost to the homeowner. If the appraisal comes in and the value is there, and now their loan balance is significantly lower as compared to the value of the home, they might be able to request the removal of the mortgage insurance. Removing mortgage insurance does not change the interest rate of their loan. So their interest rate will not change up or down in any respect.
Now, if it was an FHA, tell us in that situation.
If it's an FHA loan, refinance, because depending on what the interest rate is on their first mortgage, because even FHA loans have mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. You cannot ever get rid of mortgage insurance on an FHA loan unless you refinance out of it into a conventional mortgage. But with interest rates where they're at right now, say they have FHA with mortgage insurance, but their FHA rate is 5.5%. I'd rather have 5.5% with mortgage insurance than refinance and get a loan at 7.5% with no MI.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, so I know they have to pay the fee for the appraisal, but is there any other fee for removing that PMI or no?
Most likely no, but they need to contact whoever they're making their mortgage payments to and find out specifically from them, what are the steps that we need to take to remove the mortgage insurance and what, if any, costs may there be.
Perfect, thank you.
Welcome.
Good question.
Martin, in regards to that situation with Maria, does the bank have an option to say no if they have that 80 to 20% and
They
they're
have an
good?
option, yeah, so it depends on what their loan documents state and when the time frames to remove the mortgage insurance are. Some lenders will remove it for you. Some lenders will say, well, you know what, the documents say you have to have the mortgage for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years before we will remove the mortgage insurance. And then if you can prove that through a reduction in principal, not equity, I'm sorry, not appreciated value, but reduction in principal when you hit that 80%. So some lenders will look at the original purchase price of the home. At such time that you've paid the mortgage down, the principal amount down to 80% or less, they're supposed to remove the mortgage insurance. If you want it removed because of the appreciation of the value of the home, now you have to request from them to do that. Can I do that? And can we get an appraisal to show the value of the home? And then typically, if you can show all of that, they will remove the mortgage insurance. But it's up to the individual lender.
All right, what other questions do we have? It's 10 till, so I want to make sure that we have time for questions, or it's not 10 till. 10 till the end of our meeting. So I want to make sure we have any other questions addressed. Go ahead.
This is, regarding to like the, transaction I'm dealing with right now. So when we're trying to, so we got the inspection report and we try to do the request for repair form. Do you think we should wait for the appraiser to come back? Or what if we request a sum of money to fix something in the house? And let's say if the seller agree, and then we got appraiser coming back and say, the house is too high, it's overvalued, and are we allowed to ask again?
So with that, I'll
Several
take that.
questions there.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So the question, if in case you guys on Zoom didn't hear, is basically if you do the request for repair, should you wait for the appraisal to come in? Because what if it doesn't appraise at value? So here's the thing is that you always do have the option to renegotiate when those kind of things come. What I personally like to do is I do try to wait for the appraisal to come in so that we're only doing this renegotiation one time. Because if there are $10,000 worth of repairs needed to be done, but then the appraisal comes in $50,000 below, I'm going to focus on that appraisal and getting it down lower. I'm not going to care about the repairs. And conversely, if there are, if it comes in at value, but there are like $2,000 worth of repairs, maybe we say, we're not going to really worry about some of these things. So let's just leave it as is, or let's ask for less money, or, whatever. We have that option to go back and to really ask for what your buyers are really looking for. Keep in mind, it's always about your buyers. It's not about you and what you want to do. You're there to advise. And so you can let them know, here's what we want to do. Sometimes the appraisal doesn't come in for a lot longer. And if you have a really shortened timeline, like if you say, we're going to remove our contingencies in inspection contingency in 3 days or 7 days or 10 days, the appraisal is not going to come in that fast unless they do a rush, which your buyer is going to be paying more for that. So that's something for you to remember too, that if you're shortening contingencies, some of these your buyer is going to have to pay more for. And sometimes, like, how much do appraisals run these days?
They vary. They can range anywhere from $450 to $500 on up to $700 or more, depending on the price.
And then if it's a rush, it's like, it could be like
$150, $200 easy.
Easy. I was thinking every time I see it, when it's a rush, it's like double the amount.
Typically not double.
It's like, it just depends on how busy they are, right?
Depends on how busy they are and where is the property located,
Okay.
how difficult
Yeah.
of an appraisal might it be.
Yeah. So you just have to keep that in mind for your buyers, that if you want to shorten those contingency timelines, it potentially will be an increased amount for them. Talk about removing contingencies. So specifically removing the loan and appraisal contingency.
Okay.
Assuming they have a
That's
loan.
a great
Obviously, if
question.
it's cash, we don't care about that.
So keep in mind from my lending standpoint and you as a realtor, I would never recommend for anybody to waive their loan contingencies unless they are understanding where the loan's at. Has a loan been approved? What are the conditions of approval? And do they feel confident that they can meet those conditions? So I will never tell anybody, yes, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, it's okay for you to waive your contingencies, because I don't want that liability, because if they have 50 grand on their earnest money deposit and I say it's okay and something comes up, guess who they're going to point fingers at? And now I have a liability personally and through our company. And if you as a realtor say it's okay, you become that liable as well. So I always let people know that these decisions are up to you to decide. If you want to waive your inspection contingencies, that's great. If you want to waive your appraisal contingency, that's up to you. But understand that if the property appraisal comes in less than the sales price of the home, and you've already waived that contingency, you can't just say, oh, well, you know what, we'll just waive our loan contingency, or we'll fall back on the loan contingency. Because if I can get the loan approved and the appraisal comes in low, what are we backing out on? So you have to be very careful. We can't just assume we can get out of a contract because of a contingency. If we can't prove that there's a problem with the loan, you're going to be hard pressed to waive or get out because of that loan contingency. So be really careful with that. So when it comes time to waiving loan contingencies, I will tell Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if they're on their 17th day and the contingency has to be waived, we have loan approval, but we haven't met all the conditions. I have to leave that decision up to the buyers to make that decision for themselves. How confident are they with the approval that we have? How confident are they being able to provide the information needed to satisfactorily meet those conditions? Sometimes they'll ask me questions and I'll say, you know what, based on what you've told me, yes, that seems like it's more than acceptable. But again, I'm not going to say, yes, waive your contingency because of that. Always up to the individual buyers to make that decision.
And that, I mean, that's the case, like I mentioned before, that's the case for everything. It's up to your buyer. You are there to advise. Now, what we generally tend to fall back on is if they're saying, well, I want to remove all these contingencies, I'm fine. Number one, we always want to make sure they understand the risks. We always want to make sure they know, okay, if we remove these contingencies, here's what that is. You're at risk for losing your initial deposit, which is 1 to 3% of the purchase price. And so we don't necessarily want to just say, oh, sure, it's all good. A lot of times you hear people wanting to waive the inspection contingency, and I want to make sure that we tell them up front, we don't recommend that. Even if the only time I really am like, okay, I still am going to say we don't recommend this, are you sure, is if they themselves are a contractor or if they are like a seasoned investor and they know and they have the cash to be able to do whatever comes. For the traditional average buyer, we are not waiving inspections. And again, that's their decision. For the appraisal and loan contingency, if they decide to waive the appraisal contingency, they need to have cash in the bank to be able to cover in case there is an appraisal gap. So especially if they're offering over asking, if they're offering $100,000 over asking, we need to make sure they basically have $100,000 in the bank to cover that. Because essentially what happens is if they don't, if the appraisal comes in at the list price value, now they effectively have to be putting $100,000 more down. And so they have to bring that to the table. They can adjust their loan and they can do things like that. But basically that's kind of what that means, because the banks are not going to loan on something $100,000 more than what the appraisal brought in. They're only gonna loan on what the appraisal brings in, what the appraised value is. So if they have the cash to bring to the table, okay. But if they're saying like, oh, I just barely have enough for the down payment and closing costs, we're not waiving that appraisal. Same kind of thing for the loan. If they're like, I have millions of dollars in cash, I just wanna take advantage of a loan. Okay, great. If you wanna waive the loan contingency, that's up to you. I still want to explain the risks. And again, the average buyer does not, that's not their situation. And, you know, in this market today, you're not seeing a ton of, you don't have to waive all these contingencies. We do have a lot of cash buyers coming in, but if you come in with a loan, you're not, a lot of the cash buyers are coming in trying to lowball and get a deal. When you're coming in with a loan, you don't necessarily have to lowball. And so that's why a lot of these buyers with the loans are still being, their offers are still being accepted. So you don't have to waive all those contingencies like we were having to do a year and a half, 2 years ago. We were, you know, coming up against so many cash buyers or super strong buyers because they were just giving money out, 2% interest rates. And so people were like, yes, 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 please, I want to do this. Now what we're seeing is a little bit more people have more money to put down, I would say.
Yes.
And so whether that's because they're able to sell their home and now they can take the equity and put it into their payment, or it's just because they've been sitting and saving and, you know, all this stuff. And they're like, okay, well, I've been waiting. I wanted to buy 3 years ago and I wasn't able to, and I waited when I shouldn't have. So now I have all this cash in my hand. Whatever the reason is, we are still seeing some more cash to be able to put down. And when that's the case, there is more flexibility with the offer that they're able to make and being able to get it accepted, especially if things come back and repairs need to be made or the appraisal's low or whatever. We haven't been seeing too many appraisal issues, right?
I haven't, no.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So we're not really seeing that right now.
So when they do appraiser, they also consider like the defects, like if they see the defects in the house, the value of the house will, even though they're not an inspector, was it like if they see a crack on the chimney or, you know?
If it's a health and safety issue, they will bring it up. If it's a minor cosmetic thing, most likely they will not address that. Home inspector will, appraiser will not, unless it's a health and safety issue.
If it's health and safety issue, they will lower down the value of the house. Or
They
or
can.
they just call out.
Or they can make the appraisal a certain value and say, instead of now as is, it will say subject to repairs. So that's on rare occasion, I see that on some appraisals. So they will attest to the value subject to those repairs being made.
But a lot of times too, if they come in and see that there are defects, that there are things that are needing to be, not necessarily needing to be repaired, but just brings down the value of the house. So that's what it's going to be appraised at, the lower amount, as opposed to the house next door is fully redone, that's going to get a higher value. So it's not necessarily that they're going to call anything out, they're just going to appraise it at a lower level. All right, guys. Well, it is a little bit over. So thank you guys for staying. Thank you, Martin. I put your info in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to Martin. If you want that Friday email, reach out to Martin and he'll put you on his email list. He is always happy to help. I'm always happy to help. Next week is Labor Day. So we will not be here. I will not be here for our workshop. The following week, we're going to be talking about listings. We want to get you guys listings. So we're going to be talking about that. I think that's September 11th. So mark your calendars and we hope to see you guys there. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And thank you, Martin.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.
Have a great day.
Well, I hope that helped. That was just a little sneak peek of our weekly workshops. Remember, you can join us live in our weekly workshops every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, where you can ask any questions you have and be there in real time. Click the link below to register for the next workshop. And if you want to dig deeper and grow your real estate business, click the link below and let's schedule a call to talk about coaching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get more videos just like this as soon as they come out, and we'll see you in the next video.